Ambassador Chen Wei walked into the Great Hall of the Galactic Council. His black shoes clicked on the smooth marble floor. Above him, the ceiling stretched so high, he could barely see it. Hundreds of alien beings sat in curved rows, their eyes watching him as he moved to the center of the room. Chen had been Earth's ambassador for 10 years. He had seen many meetings like this one. But today felt different. Today, the air itself seemed heavy with anger. The council leader, a tall being with purple skin and 4 arms, stood up. His voice echoed through the hall when he spoke. "Human representative," the leader said. "Your people have gone too far." Chen kept his face calm. He had learned long ago not to show fear to aliens who saw humans as young and foolish. "We have tried to work with you," the leader continued. "We welcomed you when you first left your small planet. We gave you trading rights. We allowed you to build stations in neutral space. But you took more than we offered." Around the hall, other alien representatives nodded their heads. Some made angry sounds in their own languages. Chen recognized a few faces. The Vorthok delegate, whose people had fought humans over mining rights in the Kepler system. The Zalani ambassador, still upset about the human colony on the desert planet her people had claimed first. "You built colonies where we told you not to build," the leader said. His 4 arms moved as he spoke, pointing at a large screen that showed star maps. Red dots marked human settlements across the galaxy. "You signed treaties, and then ignored them when they did not suit you. You take resources that belong to others." Chen finally spoke. His voice was quiet but clear. "Honorable Council Leader, my people have followed all signed agreements. We built colonies only in unclaimed systems. We have never taken resources that belong to others." 22. Angry voices filled the hall. The leader raised one hand for silence. "You speak of agreements," the leader said. "But you refuse to follow our latest decision. 3 months ago, this council voted. You must give up your colonies in the Outer Rim. You must return those worlds to their original claimants. You have not done this." Chen had expected this. The vote had been close, but the council had decided that human colonies in 12 systems were illegal. Most of those colonies had been there for over 20 years. Millions of humans called those worlds home. Those colonies were built legally under the Settlement Accords of 2387, Chen said. "My government cannot force people to abandon their homes based on a council vote that changes old agreements." The hall erupted in angry sounds. Some aliens stood up from their seats. Others banged objects on the floor. The leader let the noise continue for a full minute before calling for quiet again. "This is exactly what we expected," the leader said. "Humans always believe they know better than the rest of the galaxy. You think your young species can ignore the wisdom of civilizations that existed before your son was born?" Chen said nothing. He had learned that sometimes silence was the best response. "Very well," the leader said. "Since you will not accept our guidance willingly, this council will teach you humility another way." The leader pressed something on his desk. The large screen changed to show Earth. Chen's home planet looked beautiful from space, blue and green and covered with white clouds. "Earth will become the designated refugee processing center for this galaxy," the leader announced. "Starting immediately, all displaced populations, war refugees, and failed colonists will be sent to your homeworld." Chen felt his heart beat faster, but he kept his expression calm. "How many people?" he asked. 3 million beings will arrive over the next 6 months, the leader said. "They come from dozens of different species. Many have never lived on the same world as others. Some were enemies before they became refugees." The leader's face showed what Chen thought might be satisfaction. "These refugees include populations your people have fought against. The Gordanian survivors from the war 3 years ago. The hive mind drones, who lost their connection when their queen died. Pirates and criminals from broken worlds who have nowhere else to go." Chen understood now. This was not just about taking refugees. This was about destroying human society. "Many of these beings cannot breathe your air," the leader continued. "Others need different gravity, different temperatures, different food. Some are dangerous to humans. Others carry diseases your doctors have never seen. A few species will try to kill each other on sight. The other delegates began to look pleased. Chen could see they believed this plan would work. Your planet's resources will be stretched beyond breaking, the leader said. Your cities will overflow. Your people will demand that their government abandon the illegal colonies to focus on the crisis at home. You will learn that mercy is a luxury young civilizations cannot afford. Chen was quiet for a long moment. Around the hall, hundreds of alien eyes watched him. They expected him to beg, to promise that Earth would abandon its colonies if the Council would change this decision. Instead, Chen stood straighter. Earth accepts this responsibility, he said clearly. The leader's 4 eyes blinked in surprise. You accept? Yes, Chen said. Send us your refugees, all of them. Earth will be ready. Some delegates began talking to each other in worried voices. This was not the response they had expected. You should understand, the leader said slowly. This is not a request. This is a punishment. These refugees will destroy your world's peace. Chen smiled for the first time since entering the hall. Honored Council leader, he said. You clearly do not understand humans very well. We have a saying on Earth. Give us your tired, your poor, your huddled masses yearning to breathe free. This punishment you offer us? This is a gift. The leader sat down heavily in his chair. Around the hall, delegates looked confused and worried. Chen bowed politely to the council. Earth will begin preparations immediately. We look forward to welcoming our new neighbors. He turned and walked out of the great hall, leaving behind hundreds of confused aliens who were starting to wonder if their punishment might have been a terrible mistake. Admiral Sarah Martinez stood on the observation deck of Luna Station, watching the sky fill with ships. Through the massive windows, she could see transport vessels of every size and shape approaching Earth's orbit. Some were huge cargo ships built to carry thousands of passengers. Others looked like they might fall apart before reaching the surface. How many ships is that now? She asked her aide. Lieutenant Johnson checked his tablet. 247 ships have arrived in the past week, ma'am. The largest wave yet. Sarah had been in charge of space traffic around Earth for 8 years. She had never seen anything like this. The ships kept coming, one after another, like a slow-moving river of metal and desperate hope. Her communication device beeped. Captain Diana Foster's voice came through clearly. Admiral, we have a problem with transport ship Gamma 7. They have 300 Zilani refugees on board, but their life support systems are failing. The Zilani need temperatures over 200 degrees to survive. Sarah looked at her screen. The Zilani were silicon-based lifeforms who looked like living rocks. They had been fighting a war against machine intelligences for 50 years. Now their homeworld was destroyed, and they had nowhere to go. How long until they reach Earth? Sarah asked. 6 hours, Foster replied. Send an emergency shuttle with portable heat generators, Sarah ordered. And tell the Detroit Emergency Council to prepare the old steel foundries. Those buildings can handle high temperatures. R-1. This was the kind of problem Sarah had been dealing with every day for 3 months. Earth had become the galaxy's refugee center, just as the Galactic Council had planned. But instead of chaos and breakdown, something else was happening. Down on Earth's surface, Captain Foster stood in what used to be a shopping mall in New Jersey. Now it housed 400 Mirtok families. The Mirtok were fish-like beings who needed to live in water. Human engineers had flooded the mall and installed special filters to keep the water clean and salty, just like their ocean homeworld. Foster walked along the raised walkways that let humans move through the mall without getting wet. Below her, Mirtok children played in the shallow areas, while their parents worked on weaving nets and growing seaweed for food. An elderly human woman named Mrs. Patterson approached Foster. She was one of hundreds of volunteers who came to the mall every day to help. Captain, Mrs. Patterson said, I wanted to show you something. She held up a tablet displaying pictures. My granddaughter Emma has been learning Mirtok language sounds. Yesterday, she helped a lost Mirtok child find his parents. Foster looked at the pictures. They showed a 7-year-old human girl sitting in the shallow water next to a young Mirtok. Both of them laughing. The language is really hard, Mrs. Patterson continued. It's all clicks and bubbles. But Emma says it's like singing underwater. This was happening everywhere. Foster had seen human children drawing welcome pictures for Gordanian warriors. She had watched retired teachers learning to communicate with hive mind drones who could only speak by sharing thoughts. In Chicago, former factory workers were building special gravity chambers for refugees who came from heavy gravity worlds. The tablet on Foster's belt beeped with an emergency signal. She answered quickly. Foster here. Captain, we have a situation in Processing Center Alpha 3, the voice said. It was Commander Walsh from the New York Integration Facility. Group of Thrakari refugees just arrived. They're from the warrior caste that attacked human colonies in 2391. Foster felt her stomach tighten. The Thrakari were 7 feet tall, with natural armor and claws. They believed fighting was the only way to earn honor. How many? She asked. 50 adults, about 20 children. The adults keep trying to challenge our security guards to combat. They say they will not take charity from enemies. Foster was already moving toward her transport. I'll be there in 20 minutes. Keep everyone calm. When Foster arrived at the processing center, she could hear the problem before she saw it. Deep, roaring voices echoed through the building. The Thrakari language always sounded like someone was preparing for battle. She found Commander Walsh standing nervously near a large group of tall, armored aliens. The Thrakari adults stood in a circle around their children, facing outward like they expected attack. Their leader, a massive being with scars across his face, was speaking loudly at a human security guard. What's he saying? Foster asked Walsh. He says his people will not accept help from humans because we defeated them in battle. He says taking our charity would dishonor his ancestors. Foster had dealt with warrior cultures before. She understood pride, even when it got in the way of survival. She walked straight up to the Thrakari leader. The alien was at least 3 feet taller than her, and his natural armor made him look like a walking tank. But Foster had been a military officer for 15 years. She knew how to project confidence. I am Captain Foster, she said clearly. I command this facility. The Thrakari leader looked down at her. When he spoke, his voice was like rocks grinding together. I am War Chief Korvek. We will not be prisoners of humans. You are not prisoners, Foster said. You are guests. Guests? Korvek looked confused. We fought against you. We killed your people in battle. Why do you not seek revenge? Foster had expected this question. She had been asking herself the same thing for weeks. Because the war is over, she said. And because you brought children. She pointed to the young Thrakari huddled behind the adults. They looked scared and tired. Your children are hungry and far from home, Foster continued. On Earth, we believe protecting children is more important than old fights. Korvek was quiet for a long moment. Around the processing center, other refugees had stopped to watch. Mirtak, Zilani, and dozens of other species waited to see what would happen. What do you want from us? Korvek finally asked. Help us build something better, Foster said. Your people are skilled warriors and engineers. We need that skill. But not for fighting. We need it for building homes and protecting the weak. Korvek looked at his people, then back at Foster. And if we refuse? Foster smiled. Then you refuse. But your children will still eat tonight. And they will still have beds to sleep in. For the first time, the war chief seemed truly surprised. You would feed our young even if we give nothing in return? Yes, Foster said simply. Korvek stared at her for a full minute. Then, slowly, he knelt down on one knee. It was a sign of respect among his people. Perhaps, he said quietly, humans are not what we believe them to be. Behind Foster, Commander Walsh was already calling for food and temporary housing assignments. Another group of refugees was about to become something more. Dr. Michael Torres stood in the middle of what used to be Detroit's largest automobile factory. 6 weeks ago, the building had been empty and rusting. Now it hummed with activity and glowed with intense heat. The Zilani refugees had transformed the space into something incredible. Their silicon-based bodies could work in temperatures that would kill humans instantly. They had built forges and workshops where they created metal alloys stronger than anything Earth had ever seen. Through the specially designed heat-resistant windows, Torres watched Zilani engineers teaching human apprentices how to work with their advanced metallurgy. The humans wore special protective suits that let them survive the extreme heat for short periods. "Dr. Torres?" a voice called behind him. He turned to see Krithvel, one of the Zilani elders. Approaching, the alien looked like a walking sculpture made of red and black stone, but Torres had learned to read the subtle changes that showed emotion. "The human students learn very fast," Krithvel said in careful English. "They ask good questions about molecular bonding." Torres smiled. "Humans are curious about everything. It sometimes gets us into trouble." "Yes." Krithvel made a sound that Torres had learned was Zilani laughter. "We noticed this about your species. You always want to know how things work." Torres looked around the factory. Human and Zilani workers moved between the forges, sharing techniques that neither species could have developed alone. In 6 weeks, they had created materials that could revolutionize space travel. His tablet beeped with a message from Captain Foster. The message was urgent. "Meeting in 1 hour. Integration Command Center. Important discovery about refugee populations. Come immediately." Torres said goodbye to Krithvel and took a transport to the Integration Command Center in downtown Detroit. The center had been built in a former office building, expanded with modules to accommodate different alien environmental needs. In the main conference room, Foster sat at a large table covered with papers and data tablets. Around the table sat representatives from different refugee groups and human officials. "Michael, glad you're here," Foster said when Torres entered. "I need you to hear this. Tell him what you told me, Mirtaksa." A blue-scaled Mirtak female in a water-filled mobility chair spoke through a translation device. "Dr. Torres, we must tell you truth about why many refugees came to Earth. The Galactic Council told you we were displaced by wars and disasters. This is only partly correct." After Torres, "This is only partly correct." Torres sat down, interested. "Many of us," Mirtaksa continued, "are here because we spoke against our governments. On my world, I was a scientist who published research showing that our ocean's poisoning came from government mining operations. They said my work was treasonous." A tall, thin alien that Torres recognized as a Vorthak spoke next. "I was a judge who ruled against corruption in our planet's resource allocation courts. The council said I was undermining social order. They gave me a choice: exile or prison." Foster leaned forward. "Michael, we've been interviewing refugees for weeks. More than 60% are political dissidents. Scientists who challenged official theories, artists who created controversial works, or teachers who questioned government policies." Torres felt a chill run down his spine. "The council didn't just send us their unwanted populations. They sent us their free thinkers." "Exactly," Foster said. "Look at this data." She handed Torres a tablet showing statistics. The refugee populations included an incredible concentration of scientists, engineers, philosophers, artists, and political reformers. These weren't just desperate people fleeing disasters. These were some of the brightest minds in the galaxy, exiled because they asked uncomfortable questions. "There's more," Foster said. "Show him the communication intercepts." Lieutenant Chen, a young communications officer, activated a holographic display showing intercepted transmissions between different council worlds. "We've been monitoring council diplomatic channels," Lieutenant Chen explained. 3 days ago, the Zilani ambassador sent a message to the council leader asking when they could retrieve valuable populations from Earth. "Retrieve?" Torres asked. "They expected Earth's society to collapse under the refugee burden," Foster said. "Then they plan to offer to take back the scientists and engineers, leaving us with only the unproductive refugees." Torres understood now. It was never just about punishment. They wanted to brain drain their own societies and then take back the valuable people after we failed. "But we didn't fail," Foster said with satisfaction. "And now they have a problem. Our integration success rate is over 90%. Refugee crime rates are below Earth's baseline levels, and our technological advancement has jumped forward by decades." She activated another display showing economic data. Earth's gross domestic product has increased by 18% in 6 weeks. We've made breakthroughs in metallurgy, biotechnology, aquaculture, and energy generation. The University of New Geneva has become the galaxy's leading research institution almost overnight. Torres looked at the data in amazement. The refugees aren't a burden. They're making us stronger. That's not the best part, Foster said. She nodded to Lieutenant Chen, who activated a new display showing star maps with communication networks. The refugees have been sending messages home, Chen explained. They're telling their friends and families about life on Earth, about freedom to research controversial topics, about societies where different species work together instead of fighting. The star map showed thousands of message paths spreading across the galaxy like a web of light. We're getting requests, Foster said. Not just for refugee status, but for immigration. Scientists from stable worlds who want to work in our mixed species research teams. Artists who want to create works that would be banned on their homeworlds. Teachers who want to educate students from dozens of different species. Torres sat back in his chair, overwhelmed. We've accidentally become a beacon for everyone in the galaxy who believes in freedom and cooperation. Not accidentally, Foster corrected. This is who we are. The Council thought they understood human nature, but they only saw our willingness to fight for what we believe in. They didn't understand that what we believe in is helping others. Mirtaksa spoke again. Dr. Torres, there is something else you should know. Many refugee groups have been communicating with each other, sharing information about their homeworlds and governments. We are learning things that the Council does not want us to know. What kind of things? Torres asked. A Gordanian warrior, sitting quietly in the corner, spoke for the first time. His voice was deep and careful. Resource wars that were started artificially to distract populations from government corruption. Scientific discoveries that were suppressed to maintain political power. Entire species kept in poverty while their rulers lived in luxury. Torres looked around the room at the faces of beings from dozens of different worlds. He saw intelligence, determination, and hope. You're not just refugees, he said slowly. You're revolutionaries. Foster smiled. And the Council just gave them the perfect base of operations. A world where they can work together, share information, and build something better. Outside the conference room windows, the lights of Detroit sparkled in the evening darkness. But these weren't just human lights anymore. The city glowed with the workshops of Zilani metalworkers, the aquaculture farms of Mirtok engineers, and the vertical gardens of a dozen other species. Earth was changing, and through it, the galaxy would change too. Captain Diana Foster stood in the command center of the Earth relief ship Compassion, watching the destruction on the main screen. The planet below them used to be called Helix Prime, home to 12 million Andrathi colonists. Now, it was a smoking ruin. How many survivors? She asked her operations officer. Long-range sensors show about 2 million people still alive, Lieutenant Hayes replied. Most are trapped in underground shelters. The fighting between the Crimson Fleet and the Star Coalition has been going on for 8 months. Foster had seen wars before, but this was different. Both sides in the Hegemony War claimed to be fighting for freedom and justice. Both sides were killing civilians and destroying entire worlds. Captain, Hayes continued, we're receiving distress signals from both Crimson Fleet and Coalition survivors. They're asking for evacuation. Both sides? Foster asked. Yes, ma'am. The enemy forces are trapped in the same areas as the civilians. Their ships were destroyed in the orbital battle last week. Foster thought about this. 1 year ago, Earth had been chosen to handle 3 million refugees as punishment. Now, they were volunteering to rescue people from an active war zone. Not just any people, but soldiers who had been killing each other just days before. Signal the fleet, Foster ordered. All ships begin evacuation procedures. Anyone who wants off that planet gets off. No questions asked. Lieutenant Hayes looked uncertain. Ma'am, the Coalition and Crimson Fleet forces. They're still technically at war with each other. Not on my ships, they're not, Foster said firmly. 2 hours later, the first shuttle loads of refugees began arriving. Foster watched through the observation windows as Coalition medics carried wounded Crimson Fleet soldiers to the medical bay. A group of Crimson Fleet engineers helped repair a Coalition transport that had been damaged during escape. Dr. Sarah Kim, the Compassion's chief medical officer, approached Foster with a concerned expression. "Diana, I need to talk to you about something. The refugees are asking me questions I don't know how to answer." "What kind of questions?" "They want to know why we're helping their enemies, Doctor," Kim said. "A Coalition sergeant asked me why we would heal Crimson Fleet soldiers who killed her friends. A Crimson Fleet pilot wants to know if we're going to turn him over to Coalition authorities when we reach Earth." Foster had been expecting this. "What did you tell them?" "The truth. That on Earth, the war stops at our doorstep. That everyone gets medical care, food, and safety, regardless of what side they fought on." "How did they react?" Dr. Kim smiled slightly. "The Coalition sergeant and the Crimson Fleet pilot are now sharing a recovery room. They've been talking for 3 hours about how neither of them really understood what they were fighting for. This was happening throughout the rescue fleet." Captain James Rodriguez, commanding the relief ship Unity, reported similar stories. Former enemies working together to care for civilian refugees, soldiers from both sides sharing their supplies with hungry children. Foster's communication console beeped with an incoming transmission from Earth. Admiral Martinez's face appeared on the screen. "Captain Foster, how's the evacuation proceeding?" "Better than expected, Admiral. We've rescued over 50,000 people so far. The really interesting part is watching former enemies work together once they're away from the fighting." "Any problems with integration?" Foster looked around the command center. At one station, a Coalition communications officer was working alongside a Crimson Fleet technician to coordinate rescue operations. "No problems, ma'am. In fact, I think we're accidentally ending their war." Admiral Martinez raised an eyebrow. "Explain." "When people from both sides work together to save lives, they start asking why they were trying to kill each other in the first place. We're receiving reports that similar conversations are happening throughout the rescue fleet." "Keep me informed," Martinez said. "And Captain?" "Good work." 3 days later, Foster received a message that changed everything. The transmission came from the Galactic Council itself. The council leader's face appeared on her screen, but he looked different than Foster remembered. His purple skin seemed paler, and his forearms moved nervously. "Captain Foster, this is Council Leader Zarek II. We need to discuss the situation in the Hegemony War Zone." "Of course, Council Leader. How can Earth help?" Zarek II looked uncomfortable. "We did not authorize Earth to intervene in this conflict. The war between the Coalition and Crimson Fleet is an internal matter." Foster kept her voice professional. "With respect, Council Leader, we responded to civilian distress calls. Earth's policy is to help anyone in danger, regardless of politics. Your ships are in violation of Council neutrality protocols. You must withdraw immediately and return all military personnel to their respective forces." Foster looked at the refugee data on her screens. Over 100,000 people were now safe aboard the Earth rescue fleet. Families reunited. Wounded soldiers healing. Children playing together regardless of which side their parents had fought for. "Council Leader," she said carefully, "are you ordering us to stop saving lives?" There was a long pause. Zarek II's forearms shifted uncomfortably. The war must continue its natural course. Outside intervention disrupts the balance of power." "Whose balance of power?" Foster asked. "The weapons manufacturers selling arms to both sides? The politicians safe in their bunkers while civilians die?" Zarek II's expression hardened. "Captain, you will follow Council directives or face consequences." Foster looked at her crew. Lieutenant Hayes gave her a small nod of support. Dr. Kim crossed her arms defiantly. Throughout the ship, humans and refugees from dozens of species worked together to save lives. "Council Leader," Foster said, "Earth respectfully declines to abandon people in need. We will continue rescue operations as long as there are lives to save." She cut the transmission before Zarek II could respond. Within hours, Foster received messages from across the galaxy. The Andromedanas, a peaceful species that had stayed neutral in most galactic conflicts, offered to send medical supplies to support Earth's rescue efforts. 3 independent colonies volunteered their ships to help with evacuations. Most surprisingly, Foster received a coded transmission from someone identifying himself as Coalition Admiral Torres. "Captain Foster, this is Admiral Torres of the Coalition Third Fleet. I wanted you to know that many of my officers are asking questions about this war. Questions I cannot answer." Foster replied carefully. "What kind of questions, Admiral?" "Questions like why we are fighting people who want the same things we want. Questions about who benefits when we keep killing each other instead of working together." "Those are good questions, Admiral. Captain, if I were to order my fleet to stop fighting and start helping with refugee evacuation, would Earth support us?" Foster felt her heart race. "Admiral, Earth supports anyone who chooses to save lives instead of taking them." 2 days later, the impossible happened. Admiral Torres announced that the Coalition Third Fleet was withdrawing from combat to focus on humanitarian operations. Within hours, Crimson Fleet Admiral Chen made a similar announcement. The war didn't end immediately, but something had changed. Foster watched from her command center as Coalition and Crimson Fleet ships worked together to evacuate civilians from war-torn worlds. Former enemies shared supplies, information, and hope. Ambassador Chen Wei, monitoring the situation from Earth, sent Foster a simple message. "The Council wanted to teach us humility through suffering. Instead, we're teaching the galaxy that mercy is stronger than conquest." Foster looked out at the stars, where dozens of ships from different species and factions worked together to save lives. Earth had become more than a refuge for the displaced. It had become a symbol of what the galaxy could be when compassion mattered more than power. The real revolution had begun. Ambassador Chen Wei walked through the gardens of New Geneva on a bright spring morning. 5 years had passed since the day the Galactic Council tried to punish Earth with refugees. Now, as he prepared for the most important speech of his career, Chen reflected on how much had changed. The city around him was unlike anything that had existed before. Towers stretched into the sky, their walls covered with vertical farms that fed both humans and dozens of alien species. In the parks, children from 30 different worlds played together while their parents worked in laboratories and workshops that had revolutionized galactic technology. A group of young Zilani were teaching human children how to create metal sculptures in the high-temperature workshops. Nearby, Mirtok aquaculture specialists worked with human marine biologists to develop new types of seaweed that could feed millions. Chen's communication device chimed softly. Captain Foster's voice came through clearly. "Ambassador, the transport is ready. The reformed Galactic Assembly is expecting you in 3 hours." "Thank you, Captain. I'll be right there." Chen took one last look at the city that had become a symbol of hope for the entire galaxy. Then he walked to the spaceport where his ship waited. The journey to the assembly took 2 days. Chen used the time to review the reports that had arrived from across the galaxy. The old Galactic Council had been dissolved 18 months ago, replaced by the reformed Galactic Assembly. Instead of being controlled by the oldest and most powerful civilizations, the new assembly gave equal votes to all species, including those that had never been allowed to participate before. The change had not been easy. Some of the old council members had tried to maintain their power through force, but their own populations, inspired by the example they had seen on Earth, had demanded democracy and representation. When Chen's ship arrived at the assembly station, he was amazed by what he saw. The old building had been expanded with sections designed for different environmental needs. Aquatic species could participate through water-filled chambers. High-gravity beings had spaces with increased artificial gravity. The temperature-sensitive species had climate-controlled areas. But more than the building had changed. As Chen walked through the corridors, he saw beings from hundreds of different species working together. Translators from Earth's Integration Academy helped delegates communicate in real time. The Universal Declaration of Sentient Rights, written by a committee that included refugees from 40 different worlds, hung on the walls in every known language. Chen entered the Great Assembly Hall and saw that it too had been transformed. Instead of the curved rows that had once separated species by age and power, Round tables filled the space. Each table seated representatives from different worlds and cultures, encouraging discussion and cooperation. At the center of the hall, a simple podium waited for him. Around the room, thousands of delegates from across the galaxy turned their attention to the human ambassador who had helped change their worlds. Chen walked to the podium and looked out at the faces watching him. He saw Krith Vel, the Zilani elder who now served as Minister of Technology Development, Mir Tak Sa, the scientist who had become the Assembly's Director of Environmental Protection, War Chief Korvek, who had traded his armor for the robes of a diplomat and now represented the Outer Rim colonies. 5 years ago, Chen began, this assembly's predecessor made a decision they believed would humble humanity. They sent us 3 million refugees, expecting that the burden would break our society and force us to abandon our principles. Murmurs filled the hall. Many of the delegates had been refugees themselves. Others represented worlds that had undergone their own democratic revolutions, inspired by Earth's example. The old council made 2 mistakes, Chen continued. First, they believed that diversity was weakness. They thought that bringing different species together would create conflict and chaos. Instead, they gave us the greatest gift imaginable, the chance to learn from each other and grow stronger together. Chen activated a holographic display showing economic and social data from across the galaxy. Today, the 47 worlds that have adopted the Earth integration model show the highest levels of technological advancement, economic prosperity, and social satisfaction in recorded galactic history. Crime rates have fallen. Scientific breakthroughs have accelerated. Art and culture flourish when different perspectives work together. The display showed images from different worlds. On Andromeda 7, former Coalition and Crimson Fleet soldiers worked together to build cities for war refugees. On Kepler Prime, 3 different species had solved the problem of desert farming by combining their unique knowledge. The Vorthak homeworld had ended a century of civil war, when refugees returning from Earth brought new ideas about cooperation and democracy. The old council's second mistake, Chen continued, was believing that mercy was a luxury that civilizations could not afford. They thought compassion was weakness, and that only the strong deserved to survive. Chen paused, looking directly at the section where the few remaining old council members sat. Some looked ashamed. Others still appeared angry and resentful. But we have learned something different. Mercy is not a luxury. It is the foundation of true strength. A civilization that protects only the powerful is a civilization that wastes the talents of everyone else. A society that helps only its own people is a society that limits its own potential. The hall was completely quiet now. Chen could see delegates leaning forward, listening carefully to every word. When you sent us, you're broken, you're desperate, you're unwanted. You thought you were punishing us. Instead, you gave us the building blocks of a better galaxy. The scientists whose research had been suppressed helped us solve problems we didn't even know we had. The artists whose works had been banned showed us new ways to see beauty. The teachers, whose ideas had been rejected, helped us understand ourselves and each other. Chen activated a new display showing communication networks spreading across the galaxy like a web of light. Today, over 200 worlds participate in the Galactic Exchange Program. Students study on planets completely different from their own. Scientists collaborate across species barriers that once seemed impossible to cross. Artists create works that could only exist when different cultures work together. The display showed images of the results. Architecture that combined the engineering skills of 12 different species. Music that blended sounds no single species could have created alone. Medical advances that came from understanding how different types of life could heal each other. The refugees you sent us have not forgotten who welcomed them and who rejected them, Chen said. They have not forgotten which civilizations offered hope and which offered only closed borders. The galaxy is choosing its future. And it is choosing cooperation over conquest, inclusion over isolation, mercy over might. Chen looked around the hall one last time. In the audience, he saw beings whose ancestors had been enemies for thousands of years now, working together as colleagues and friends, children who had been born on Earth but carried the heritage of dozens of different worlds. scientists who had fled persecution and found freedom to pursue knowledge without fear. We stand at a moment of choice, Chen concluded. We can return to the old ways of division and competition, where the strong dominate the weak and different peoples fear each other. Or, we can continue building something better. A galactic community where every species contributes their unique strengths and everyone benefits from our shared knowledge. Chen smiled as he delivered his final words. The old council thought they were teaching humanity a lesson about humility. They were right, but they misunderstood what human humility looks like. It is not submission to power. It is the recognition that we are all stronger when we help each other succeed. It is the understanding that taking care of those who have nothing is how civilizations prove they deserve everything. Chen stepped away from the podium to thunderous applause. Around the hall, delegates from hundreds of worlds rose to their feet. The sound continued for several minutes, a celebration of how far they had all come. Later that day, Chen stood again in the gardens of New Geneva, watching the sunset paint the sky in brilliant colors. Captain Foster found him there, looking peaceful and satisfied. "How do you think it went?" she asked. Chen smiled. "I think the old council was right about one thing. The refugee crisis did change humanity forever." "How so?" "It taught us that our greatest strength isn't our technology or our military power," Chen said. "It's our willingness to see potential in everyone and give them a chance to prove it." Above them, the lights of the space station glittered like stars. Transport ships arrived and departed, carrying people and ideas between worlds that had once been isolated from each other. The galaxy had become a place where being different was celebrated rather than feared, where helping others was seen as strength rather than weakness. The punishment had become a gift. The burden had become a blessing, and the galaxy would never be the same again.